Hi, everybody, and welcome to Tuesdays with Tilde. I'm Tilde Guajardo, your host. I'm going to tell you a little bit about our guest today, who is Emiliya, and I call her Emiliya Z because I find it really hard to say her last name, Zhivotovskaya.
That's close. I'll take it. Thank you.
Okay, so Emiliya Zhivotovskaya is one of the first 75 people in the world to earn a master's degree in positive psychology from the University of Pennsylvania. She holds a professional certified coach accreditation through the International Coaching Federation. She's a speaker, coach, consultant, and experiential learning curator. Emiliya is the founder of the Flourishing Center and is the creator of the Certification in Applied Positive Psychology program. Thank you, Emiliya, for being here with us and being able to join us on this Tuesday.
You're welcome, Tilde. Thank you for having me, and hello to all the people out there that are listening live and will be listening in the future.
I just want to let everybody know that we actually met through Dr. Francois Booker Drew, who made the introduction, and we were actually thinking about bringing positive psychology and the CAP program here to Dallas, and just really I got to talk to Emiliya on the phone and learn a little bit more about positive psychology, and I was motivated to go to San Francisco and take the CAP course that she created myself, and I'm just thrilled to have her here. So Emiliya, tell people a little bit more about you, why positive psychology is so important to you, and what prompted you to start the CAP course.
Thanks, Tilde. I would love to tell you about that. So, gosh, so many places to start the story, but I think the biggest one is that I knew at a really young age that I loved helping people. I loved the mind, I loved the body, and I love science. And I was really grateful that I got into the field of positive psychology pretty early into its onset, and I was part of the second graduating class at the University of Pennsylvania, and I was straight out of college when I started this program, and I knew that I wanted to be a life coach. I knew I wanted to be a speaker, and while I was already doing these things very naturally most of my life, because people usually went to me when they had, no matter what stage of life they were in, when they had an issue, they would come to me, but I thought to myself, who's going to take a 20-year-old life coach seriously? And I thought to myself, well, I love science and I love research, so let me bridge my passion for the type of topics that are taught in self-help classes and the kind of things that life coaches do for people, and let me study the science of positive psychology, because it gives legitimacy, gives us tangible tools that are proven by science. So that's kind of what put me onto the path of positive psychology in short. Obviously, there's longer versions of that. And I created the Certification in Applied Positive Psychology program because after about 6 or so years of speaking in the field, I realized that there was very few opportunities for people to study positive psychology professionally. If they were not going to go out and get a master's degree in positive psychology in one of only 2 or 3 universities, there really was no opportunities for people who work with other people, who help organizations, who help schools, who help individuals. They didn't have access to positive psychology aside from occasional one-off online courses or ebooks or books that people would be reading. And positive psychology, one of the biggest findings that it tells us is that other people matter, community matters. People need to feel like they belong, that they have a tribe of like-minded and like-hearted people. So I took all of the 40 or 50 different individual workshops that I had created over the years in sharing the science of positive psychology with people, and we put them together into a certification program that prepares people who are passionate about helping others get equipped with the tools, practices, measurements of positive psychology so that they can integrate this work into their personal and professional lives. So I like to think of myself as a tool collector. I love bringing positive psychology to life for people. And I love equipping people with these tools because so much of the reason that people struggle or languish in life has to do with the fact that they're not really taught the tools for how to operate their mind or how to operate their body. And positive psychology gives us so much empirical evidence that guides us about how we can handle ourselves and what we can do in these circumstances. So That's why I created what I created. The Flourishing Center is just it's a 10-year-old company, yet still in the infancy stages, because so much of what we do is just following where our students need us to be, programs that our students want from us. And it's just been an honor to be able to spread this program throughout North America and online internationally, because there's so many people out there who are passionate about making a difference in the world, and we just want to equip them with the resources to do so.
I think that's awesome. And I think that's why I'm so passionate about helping you do that, because I know that the effects that positive psychology has had in my own life. And part of the whole reason that I took the certification course last year is because once I had already started reading a little bit about positive psychology, and was really interested in the science behind it. I had, as you know, Emiliya, had gone through a traumatic childhood and kind of been doing a lot of the same things, or had to do a lot of the same things that are taught in positive psychology, as far as, changing your mindset and having more of a learner versus judger mentality and things like that. So it was really fascinating for me to go through the 6-month course and have so many aha moments that showed me the science behind just that it happened, But I mean, what really transpired within me, within my mind, that I was no longer shameful or fearful or angry, but it was those practices that I had to do on a daily basis that really began to change my outlook on life. The gratitude factor, how huge, I mean, even just, I can't express it to people enough, just how huge the gratitude factor is in changing your outlook on life and the quality of life that you'll have just with that one little practice. So I was really excited to take the course, and I'm so happy that I did, because it solidified, for me, the most exciting part was, okay, now I know what happened to me, and that those practices really helped. But now to be able to teach that and partner with others who are teaching it, so that people, and women in particular, for Womanars, get results so much faster, because we're able to explain to them how to put in place those practices that really work. So what, for you in your personal life, has positive psychology done for you? I mean, what's been the biggest aha moment that you experienced?
Oh my gosh. There's daily ahas. It's so hard to figure any one out. Like I said, I've been in this field formally for over a decade, and probably informally for over 15 years. And so everything from definitely I would say I use positive psychology hundreds of times throughout the day, because, as you mentioned, Tilde, it's the reframe, it's the constant reframing that I'm going through, that has to do, for me, about how I manage my energy. So I've spent the greater part of all of this teaching my students and teaching myself the principles that you learned in the CAP program of self-awareness, self-compassion, and self-care. And for me, that the heart of all positive change actually starts with self-awareness, and starts with being able to be aware of my tendencies, be aware of what I'm needing at any given point. So throughout the day, I've tuned myself to a sort of mindfulness that has to do with, what am I thinking? How am I feeling? Am I getting overwhelmed? Am I finding myself in an anxious pattern? Am I giving my energy away? Am I depleted? Do I need a break? Why am I craving the sugar? Why do I want coffee? Do I want to go to the gym, or do I want to go to the gym? Oh, how interesting. I want to move my body right now. That kind of curiosity that I've cultivated. And it's just one of the many facets of positive psychology, because positive psychology studies gratitude and strengths and hope and prayer and meaning and purpose and goal setting and all sorts of other things. But at the end of the day, I think a lot of it continues both in the variety of spiritual traditions and in the positive psychology literature, to keep bringing us back to self-awareness, self-compassion, and self-care. So I think that model that I created, that I borrowed from yoga and other disciplines, just tacked in a little self-compassion in there, is the practice that is the overarching practice that includes all of them. And then with that, positive psychology offers us many different tools for self-care. So if you only have a hammer, you treat everything like a nail. And so some days I have to do my soft belly abdominal breathing to stimulate my vagus nerve and calm my body down, so I'm more in a down-regulated, relaxed state. And then other days, I need to do a gratitude practice to help me fall asleep. And other days I need to mind map to get my thoughts, get a handle on my thoughts and what am I wanting and where. And other days I need to spend time cultivating my relationships and train myself to be really present with the people that I'm with rather than letting my mind wander. But they all keep coming back to those three.
So what have you found that people struggle with most? Because I know you're a coach. So what do you find, and women in particular?
Elements of just different varieties of stress and overwhelm. So it takes the form of anxiety, it takes the form of worry, it takes the form of perseverating, it takes the form of being extremely, extremely hard on oneself. And I think that it comes from many, many different sources, particularly for women. It's just today's daily world and daily life has so much more in it than any of our ancestors ever had to face before. And we just have a brain that hasn't quite adapted to this rapid pace of life that we get ourselves caught into. So I think that the reason, the big thing that people struggle with is just the sense of speed by which life is flying by these days and how much people feel that they need to do. Our world is faster today than it's ever been. And in some ways we love that because it's thrilling and we can get immediate gratification. And it's like, oh, I want to buy something. It'll be here in 2 days on Amazon, and even better, it'll be here by the end of the day. Or, hey, I want to talk to this person. I just pick up the phone and I call them. But with that also comes the ability to be on all the time. Mm-hmm. And that really takes a toll on our body, and very few people are trained how to actually work with their physiological response and work with their mental response. And what ends up happening is they often make a mental problem out of something that's a physical problem. Like I was sitting across the table with a young 20-something-year-old woman the other day, and she's telling me about how just has so much anxiety, and I'm watching her breathe, and literally she's just only her upper chest is breathing. It's just going up and down and up and down and up and down. And I said, "Do you ever notice that you're a shallow breather?" And then she goes, just talking about that makes me anxious. And yeah, sure, she might be feeling a little bit anxious, but so much of it could also be because she's not breathing properly and her body is in a stress space. So that was a long-winded answer to your question, Tilde, but the basis of it is that life's intense, more intense than it's ever been, not because we've got saber-toothed tigers chasing after us, but because we have small little teeny tiny little stresses sprinkled all over our day-to-day life, and people don't have the tools to manage them, to deal with them.
So give people an idea of when we know that we've been on for too long.
Oh gosh, it's different for different people. And this is why self-awareness is so key, to start to notice what are your patterns. For some people, they get snippy. Others, they get tired. Others, they crave sugar, they crave fat, they crave things that they normally wouldn't necessarily want to put into their body. Some people get defensive, and it really requires a person to go inward and ask themselves, how does my body communicate to me? I will know because my breath gets really shallow, and I'll get a gasping kind of sensation where I have to take a deep, full breath in. And that's my cue for my body to say, okay, we need a break. We need to down-regulate. So it really varies. Some people will need to just have rapid thoughts, and others won't hear it until they are sick with the flu. They're just going, what happened? I'm just wiped out. It's like, well, there were signs usually that you were possibly ignoring up until then.
Yeah. I know I sometimes wait way too long before disconnecting, and going, and then just getting sick, which is the worst form of it, or just feeling lethargic a lot of times, and getting really tired. I think those are my indicators. So what I've started to do now, I mean, I just went on a 21-day sabbatical, to kind of reconnect and refocus for many different reasons, both spiritually and physically for myself. And in 21 days, I literally felt like I had done a 180-degree turn. I mean, I was where all I wanted to do was take a nap, morning, noon, and night before the 21 days. After the 21 days, I had this energy, and did I feel like taking a nap once in a while? Yes, I still do. But now it's like a 10-15 minute nap, and then I'm up and I'm ready to go again, where before it was becoming a 2-hour nap, and then I was tired all over again after that nap. And I think that's, for a lot of women I know, we allow ourselves, or we push ourselves to that limit, and then we're no good to anybody. Especially if you're a mom and you're not taking care of yourself. I think it's essential. For me, I'm single, and the only person really that I'm hurting is myself. But I think both men and women have a tendency to forget and to push, and then that exhaustion comes out, like you said, in many different ways. For me, it happens to be really tired or really cranky. And so instead of being cranky, I'll go and I'll take a nap. So what are some,
Self-awareness and self-compassion and self-care.
yeah, exactly. And so what are some examples, easy examples that you can give to people about that self-care, and, maybe some things that you do personally?
Yeah. I think it's helpful for people to hear that the motto of mind body medicine and the shift to what we call a new medicine
Mm-hmm.
is self care is health care. And we can talk about preventative medicine and the importance of people practicing self care to prevent that. We can also talk about not just trying to ward off illness, but to actually maintain high level wellness, help people thrive into their 80s, their 90s, their hundreds, if that's what they want. Not saying you should want that, but if you want it, if you're going to be around that long, why not stay vital? And self care is really essential for that. It's very demoralizing for people to not have tools and practices to take care of themselves, because then you become dependent on your doctor and drugs and pharmaceuticals to fix what's wrong. And usually they're catching that kind of stuff when it's too late. So I think that before we can talk strategy, I think we need to embrace Brene Brown's principles for authentic living. And one of them is she talks about cultivating play and rest. And she says, let go of exhaustion as a status symbol, which I know I had been a product of most of my life. I was born in Ukraine to an immigrant family that we immigrated here when I was 5 years old, and my parents were amazing. They were just your typical immigrants that went to work right away. I was, an 8-year-old kid who babysat myself after school. I made myself lunch. I did my homework. I did all those things because my parents had to work. So, as an immigrant kid, you grow up quickly, and you also I inherited that work ethic where I worked hard all throughout high school. My first job, my first career started when I was 14. I was a professional party entertainer. I worked every weekend. I worked through. I've never really not worked since I was in middle school, I guess. And it's one thing to work, it's another thing to take pride in and create a story of oneself around productivity and to value ourselves by what we produce. And so it took me a while to, and I still have to continue to remind myself that I'm a human being and not a human doing. And for people to recognize that not only is it not helpful to try to just define yourself by your accomplishments and what you do, it really isn't authentic, wholehearted living. Because when we are caught up in saying, wow, look at me, look at the beating I can take. Because for me, I used to say, oh yeah, I can get by. I can get by in 4 hours sleep. I can get by in 5 hours sleep. Look at me. Not paying attention to the fact that I was frying my adrenal system. I wasn't giving my body an opportunity to heal, to step into what we call an anabolic state where I'm building up tissue rather than catabolic, where I'm breaking down tissue. And we just have so much evidence today that is related to the field of psychophysiology about how our emotional responses are impacting our body. We're talking, we can measure people's immune system response and see lower frequency of fighter cells, of immune boosting cells in the body when a person is experiencing stress and negative emotions. We know that sleep is by far the most important thing a person can do for their health. That when we start to get sleep deprived, our body stores calories. Our body is not in fat burning mode, it is in fat storing mode. Our body is going to be functioning with an impeded level of mental focus. We don't learn as well when we're not well rested. And we now even have research that shows that on a genetic level, down to the chromosomes of our body, we have these end gaps of our DNA called telomeres that kind of hold the telomere together. I'm sorry, they hold the DNA together, and they kind of like unzip our DNA, which enables it to copy and then go out and reproduce and make new cells. Well, when we're in high stress levels, we actually accelerate the natural aging process of those telomeres getting shorter and shorter, shorter. Just because we're stressed out, we literally can age ourselves faster. And so there's so many repercussions of this. We see cardiovascular disease going up. We see all of the gastrointestinal problems that people have, irritable bowel syndrome, all of these stress-related metabolic diseases that could really be prevented just by lifestyle changes, just by simple practices that have to do with self-care. So that's my kind of like take self-care seriously. Your body is a battery.
Yeah.
Your body is a battery. And actually what I love so much about your story, Tilde, is it reminds us all of how forgiving the body is.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying, hey, test it to the limits, beat it up, and then put it through a 3-week cleanse and you'll be fine. Obviously, you don't want to whiplash your body. But people also, I think, fall into like a learned helplessness pattern where they say, oh, why bother? You know, I haven't made it to the gym today, so I'm just going to eat this. Or they say, oh, well, I can't take a full hour class, so I'm not going to do anything at all. And, you know, the 10-minute power walk is better than the 1-hour class that you never get to. Yeah. Or the body actually goes into what we call sleep debt. So when you go for a certain amount of time without getting enough sleep, sure, you can get by. I was able to get by, but you're borrowing from the bank and you're going to pay it back with interest. Yeah. But what research shows is that if you just let yourself get more than enough sleep for a couple of weeks, just to let your body reset itself naturally, the body is so forgiving. It knows this dynamic place of balance. We call it Homeo Dynamic, not homeostatic, but Homeo Dynamic. And your body is very well adapted to bring itself back there. So the practices that nurture me, by far, first and foremost, is exercise. Nothing in this world seems to do it for me quite the way that does. And I should say that I'm not up here as a lifetime mover talking about the benefits of exercise. I was a chubby, overweight kid. I was never much of a mover. I preferred things like art and painting and sculpting. And when I did participate in sports, there were things like dance. Like I totally had this fixed mindset around things with balls. Didn't know what to do with a ball. Was never taught. And I had to learn to become a mover. I had to learn to reconnect with that part of myself that didn't want to play sports, but actually we're all animals and we're wired to move. And so few things will balance me back out the way that exercise would. And then I would say gratitude and healthy food and sleep and spiritual practice and time with friends, hugs and food, hot water, and petting my dog.
I think hugs are like awesome.
The problem isn't the tools, though. That's the fascinating thing about human nature, right, Tilde? Like we we all know what we're supposed to do. And the late positive psychologist Chris Peterson used to say, when we know what we know, why do we do as we do?
Yeah.
And so when we know, like everybody knows exercise is bad for you, bad for you. I'm sorry, exercise is good for you. Everyone knows sitting is bad for you. Everyone is like, like you kind of have to be in a bubble to not hear all the statistics coming out saying sitting is the new smoking, sitting is the new smoking. We shouldn't be sitting, but habits are hard to break and we need that why. So that's why when you ask like, how do we do it? It has to start with our mindset. It has to start with it's not to be centered on myself is not self-centered.
Right.
And that self-care is health-care. And if I don't take care of this vessel, who's going to do it for me?
Right. And, you hit on the mindset a little bit. And that's why for me and relaunching this new website with the topics, that are centered around finances, business, relationships, mind, body, spirit, and adventure, reminding people how to have fun, all of those are going to be centered not only on teaching pretty much the basics of how to manage your finances or anything like that in particular, but really our limiting beliefs around those things and how we can change our mind and why we're not addressing some of the fear factor that we might have in managing our finances or, having better relationships, having healthier relationships and things like that. Talk, if you would, just a little bit about the mindset. I mean, and how, how do we talk about the past and how that plays a part in the mindset that we have and how we can change that for our future or our present?
Yeah, absolutely. So mindset is something that we learn. A baby doesn't come into this world with belief systems. Mindsets are often the reflection of a thought that we've told ourselves often. And that thought that we've told ourselves often becomes a belief. And a number of beliefs become our mindset. So we come into this world with basic tendencies, with basic things that we gravitate towards. But we learn a mindset, we learn beliefs through the messages that we hear, the messages that we observe, that we mimic. And we end up inheriting mindsets for lots of different things. The two that are of particular interest in positive psychology, and possibly to the people on the line, is this idea of, do you believe that things can change, or do you believe that things are kind of stuck the way that they are? And so this will show up for people in the mindset that they hold about what does it take to be successful on a diet, or what does it take to have a marriage that works, or what does it mean to be good in business? And so we hold these stories. Essentially, mindsets are just stories that we're telling to ourselves about the world. And most people go most of their life not realizing that they've got a little dialogue playing inside of their head, and they've got beliefs about how things work that actually impact a lot of their life experience. And if you are finding yourself in a place where you're unhappy and dissatisfied with what's going on around you, it's actually a great opportunity to explore, what is it about this experience that's reflecting to me how I'm thinking about the situation? Right. And my favorite quote about it of late is Amy Purdy, this incredible inspirational woman who lost both of her legs in a traumatic infection that she had, a young woman who had all of these dreams and all of these plans about things that she was going to do. And next thing you know, she is now left without both of her legs and needing to figure out how she's going to navigate these dreams and hopes that she had. And her story is incredibly inspiring. And she starts off her TED Talk by saying, if your life were a book and you were the author, how would you want this story to go? And so that's what a lot of mindset is. It's, can we be flexible? Can we be resilient? Can we be adaptable and recognize that we can choose the story that we're telling ourselves and that we have the ability to shift our perceptions?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's one of the most powerful things that we forget, right? Is that we are we can actually control the direction in which our life is going with every single choice that we make, whether it's a physical doing something choice or the mental muscle being exercised, and thinking a little bit differently, and the effects that that little bit of a mind shift can make in the quality of life that we actually have.
I do. Can I just add into that though? 'Cause
Absolutely.
I will say that for some people, they're going to sit there and go, "Yeah, that's great. That's awesome. I'm going to take on an attitude of gratitude. I'm going to focus on what I want rather than what I don't want. I'm going to focus on being other-centered and being of value, being of service." And others might say, "Hey, I'm feeling stuck. I'm feeling depressed. I'm feeling anxious, and some of it feels very biochemical to me." And it's not that I can just think my way into a more positive place. And in fact, positive psychology often gets confused with positive thinking. They're two very different. Positive thinking is just an idea that someone came up with, and
Right.
positive psychology is a rigorous scientific study. And one of the findings of positive psychology informs us that we are able to impact our life satisfaction, but it's impacted by also our life circumstances a little bit, our genetics actually a little bit or quite a bit, and then what we think and how we feel and what we do. And the biggest way that we use this equation that we talk about, we call it that life satisfaction pie, is that when it comes to the differences between people, about 50% of our life satisfaction, approximately, it could be somewhere between 40 to 60, it really depends for people, is actually biologically determined. Now, this doesn't mean that if you had depressed parents, you're bound to be depressed. But it is important for people to recognize that there is some chemical component to it. There is a genetic component to it. And what we're not saying is that everybody should just be able to think or feel positive. But it's important for people to know that they can change within the domain that they are most wired for. And many people just tend to give their happiness or their life satisfaction away entirely to their genetics. And they say things like, "Well, I'll never be as happy as Tilde. Tilde just has those magic bubbly genes with her cute little cheeks. That's just not me. And why bother?" And it's that why bother that really is the biggest problem. If a person suffers from social anxiety, usually what they end up doing is not putting themselves in social situations. And they feel better thinking that the reason that they feel better is because they're staying home alone. But it's not that that's making them feel better, it's just that they didn't put themselves through the discomfort. So, like, the worst thing that we can actually do is take on the why bother, because then we don't bother trying. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. We hit the abort button too quickly. We abandon the diet. We abandon the new job. We abandon the new boyfriend when it gets too hard.
Yeah.
And it's not what positive psychology tells us, which is more accurately that it's about being mindful, it's about being adaptable, but also being resilient and gritty and staying in it when you need to.
Yeah. I'm so glad that you said that, because I don't want to give the impression, and I've said this before, that, for me and my journey, it was a huge part of it was my faith in God. But also, after, my spiritual awakening, it was some really hard work. And it took me years to change my outlook and the outlook I had on my life, and from going from an angry, young woman to the positive person that you see today. That took some really hard work, and I don't want to give the impression, like you said, that it's not hard work, because it is, and it takes some real grit, and does take resiliency. And there were many times when I didn't think it was worth it, but I continued on, because that's not the type of person that I really wanted to be. And I think the exciting part for me with positive psychology is what took me maybe 10 years to change within myself, and the outlook that I have, and the tools that I still go back to, which are, part of the positive psychology tool chest, if you will, can take now, half that time or even a year for people, to go from a traumatic childhood the way I did, and changing my mindset as to being able to trust again, wanting to fall in love, not seeing the worst in people all the time, and that to me is the most exciting part of positive psychology. So I thank you for pointing that out, because it is hard work that people have to commit to.
Yeah. Effort.
Yeah.
I like the word effort more.
Yeah.
Because it could be, it's people go, oh, hard work. Who wants to work? I work plenty. But the idea of like effort is, it takes effort, and it could be a really fascinating process.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I find the biggest compliment that somebody pays me is, I can't imagine you being angry, or being an angry person, Tilde. And to me, it's like, well, you're lucky that you were never at the other end of that wrath, because that to me is the biggest compliment somebody can pay me. I want you just to touch, before I let you go, because I know you're on a busy schedule. How important it is for people to do this type of learning in a group setting, and what happens in a group setting that doesn't happen as an individual?
Yeah. Oh, such a great question. I get that all the time when people say, oh, Emiliya, the 6-month certification program, I've got a lot on my plate. I travel a lot. Can I just read the syllabus and get your 500-page manual and read it along on my own? And I go, yes, you can, but you'd be missing the foundation of what positive psychology has taught us. So in study after study, when you compare the most happy people, quote unquote happy, those who are most satisfied with their life, compared to the least happy people, and kind of plot them out on a bell curve, when you compare those two populations, what you find is that actually every single measure that we would think that might associate with their happiness level actually melts away. It's not differences in socioeconomic status. It's not how much money they make, not where they went to school, not their ethnic differences, not their age, not their health, but actually the number of close quality relationships that they have. And we actually know that chronic loneliness, or even a little bit of loneliness, is tied to dis-ease. It's tied to depression. In fact, we actually have a loneliness epidemic going on in our world today, where we have more and more people having more ways to connect than ever before, yet more people feeling lonely and disconnected. Because the key word is that people need to feel like they belong. People need to feel like they matter. And there's so many benefits to learning positive psychology and practicing positive psychology in a supportive community. One is you get to learn from one another. One of the things that actually brings me the most humility and brings me down to my knees about this program is our youngest student has been 16 and our oldest is 74.
Wow. Mind
you, our average, or people are in their late 30s, to their like mid 50s and all that. People who are working professionals who are integrating positive psychology into their world. But it also is for anyone who is passionate about this work, that wants to become a better person. And the fact that we actually learn throughout different fields, throughout different generations, and we learn from one another. You get to actually see it put into practice in other industries that help you better understand how to translate positive psychology. Also, as you're trying it on in your own life, everything that we teach our students to do for others, we first have to do for ourselves. And so many people will say, I finally found my kula, my community, my people, where they don't have to be the ones doing for someone else, a community that nurtures them, because oftentimes the people who do come to these programs are the caregivers, are the go-to people. They're the ones listening to other people's stories. And to find just a place where people could disarm and just be themselves, and to learn this incredibly empowering, cool stuff in a way that's playful and joyful. So one of the components of our program is we meet once a month in person. And there are some places that try to do this kind of learning entirely online, but you miss out on actually using the whole body to learn. And as I know you will attest, Tilde, that there are exercises where we say, turn to the person next to you. You actually have to physically touch something, hold something in order to get that somatic learning engaged in your life. And it's all about the community. And then what ends up happening is when you're done, when you're ready to step out of the learning environment and you're going out on your own, you're not alone. You know that there's firstly other people who are just as worried, just as scared as you are, because they're running, even if they've been doing this for a long time, now they're doing something different. Now it's more science-based. Now they're really passionate about bringing the data in. So it's a little nerve-wracking, and they're not out on the limb by themselves. They have people who care about them, that you mutually support one another, and then you've got people to bounce ideas off of. The amount of collaborations that come out of our CAP program, and not usually, and sometimes not immediately afterwards, but months later, years later, people continue to support one another, because really we're all out for the same mission. As cheesy as it sounds, like we're all people who want to make the world a better place. And you can't do it alone. But as Margaret Mead said, never underestimate the power of a small group of highly motivated individuals to change the world, because in fact, that's the only thing that ever has. So I kind of like to think of all of our capsters and all of us out there doing this work. We're kind of like the white army of like good guys. And we're just like out there just spreading this. And it's not just spreading quote unquote love or peace. Like we're spreading tangible, physical, nitty-gritty tools that have everything to do from boosting your heart rate variability that we can monitor on a screen, to the intangible capital that gets created between two people when they trust each other, when they see each other, when they hear each other.
Yeah, well, I can attest for my own journey through the CAP program, and you're right. I mean, the group atmosphere was unmatched. To be in, I think there was 21 of us in my class, and to be in a group like that where everybody is kind of, you find your tribe, because you're all optimistic. You do want to make a difference in the world, and you're lifelong learners, so you're there to learn. You're open to what other people are saying. You're present, and the atmosphere was just amazing. And I know that I have lifelong friends that came out of that program, and obviously meeting you and people like you that are at the forefront of positive psychology and really the positive impact that it's having around the world, because you are creating this sort of army that's going out and excited about going out and teaching something that hopefully will improve the lives of many, many people. So kudos to you for stepping out there and doing it.
Thank you so much, Tilde. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And there's so many ways to use positive psychology, and teaching is one of them. Coaching is another. We have people who bring this work in as consultants to organizations. We see changes happening in lots of little teeny tiny places. Teachers bringing it into their kindergarten classes, law firms teaching deep breathing and relaxation and stress management. So there's a lot of work to be done out there, and I'm just honored that I get to do my little part of it and get to share my personal strengths and my zest and my love for this in a way that empowers people. And if I can, I would love to just list some of the different places where we're located in case somebody is
I was gonna ask
in
you.
a city nearby. Thank you. Yeah, so if you happen to be in a city within flying distance, our furthest student has come from Denmark to New York every month. So we're trying to get ourselves out there so people don't have to travel as much, but we do have people who travel. So the CAP program is now based in Philadelphia, New York City, Washington, D.C., in Raleigh, North Carolina, in Chicago, in Boston, in San Francisco, in Toronto, Ottawa, and Vancouver, and soon to be in Dallas, Texas. Yay! And I think I got them. Oh, in Miami, Florida. So those are our many upcoming cohorts. And we also offered our very first international program that's done entirely online, that's only available to people in other parts of the world that are not US and Canada, because they have a harder time being able to travel to get to us.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Can you tell people the website that they can go to?
Absolutely. So it's Certificate in Positive Psychology Or if you're interested, we actually have a free positive psychology masterclass where you get to learn the basic tenets of positive psychology along with some evolution of the brain and the body and some really neat tidbits that we think are really essential for human flourishing. And you can access that free class by going to getcertifiedinpp.com, so that you get certified in positivepsychology.com. And you guys could always reach me. My email is just Emiliya@Emiliya.com, spelled Emiliya. And we happen to locked in the phone number 212 Flourish. So if you want to give me a call, you can call me 212 Flourish. And I think it's the phone happening right now. On that phone.
That was fast. You guys are fast watching Facebook. I just got to say. Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time. And you guys really reach out to Emiliya. She makes herself available despite her busy schedule, and she is always going. She's made herself available to me on numerous times for many things, and really appreciate that, Emiliya, about you and just how authentic and transparent you are about everything that you do, your passion for what you do. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Tilde. And we appreciate you and all the things you're doing in the world, and all the women in Womanars, the power of the women, such a beautiful logo and motto. And also to the man behind the camera, we appreciate you, Dave, wherever you are.
Yeah, we can't forget Dave. He gets hurt if we don't mention him from time to time.
I think I'm becoming a mascot now.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. Really hope you enjoyed this show with Emiliya at the Flourishing Center, and really do hope that you take advantage of her programs throughout the country and soon to be throughout the world. Our mission at Womanars is to make it fun and easy for you to find inspirational and educational content online. We produce shows like this one and many others that we feature on our YouTube channel. So if you'd like to know more, please visit us at Womanars on YouTube. And if you like this show, please let us know by posting comments on our YouTube channel or liking us on Facebook, Twitter, or where else are we, Dave? I always forget. YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. Oh, yes, I am on Instagram. So Womanars at Instagram. Be sure and follow us and let us know what you think so far, and maybe give us some tidbits of advice on what we can do better, what we're doing right, and maybe some suggestions on interviews you'd like for us to be doing. So thanks again.